Hi Lynn. Alright, so here is your past life spread. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at where you are, what you do with the majority of your time, an important day with the relationships and feelings involved, another important day, the death, and lesson learned. And we'll get hints of time throughout, alright? So all I'm going to do is relay to you the images and impressions that I'm getting. And your job is going to be to try to make connections wherever you can from what we're going over here to your current life. And I'll try to help however I can too. Alright? Okay, so let's start. So here, this puts us in Asia. And I know there's a lot of places that we can go here. Even as far as this deck goes, Russia can be part of Asia as well. When I put this card down, what came to mind was the feel of an island and the feel of tradition, and it felt very much like Japan, though it could be Korea, but it feels more like Japan. And it feels like we're going, as far as timelines, it feels very like traditional, and I know that can span thousands of years when I say that, but it feels like we're looking at the life of a female who was like dressed in those like long robe-like dresses, the ones that with the cuffs that went down like the, you know what I'm talking about. If you Google some like traditional garb or attire of Japan, and it's like it's not modern, and I want to say it's not so much like ancient times, but it is definitely when it was like when what we consider almost like, I'm trying to it's like, I don't even know how to compare it. It's like see, Mulan I think is Chinese, so it's not that. It's like I'm trying to think. There's a word for it it's like a word like Shoshidu or Koshidu, or it was a dynasty period. Like, I feel like we're looking at like a specific dynasty period, and it's when the women were supposed to look a certain way, very docile, very, well, what we're looking at here is a female who is a daughter. That's like her main role is the daughter role, and this does very much feel like her place in the family and family dynamics and having to do her duty. And this is like they're showing like so what's coming through too is like gardens and almost like minimalism, but not. It's like gosh, it's almost like there's a movie there's a movie out where it's like the last oh, something warrior, like with what's his face, Tom Cruise, where he goes back into the old Japan and trains, you know, with the warriors. Gosh, the word's not coming to me, but it's like that kind of thing where it's like we're seeing them placed, like it's almost like they're outside of a city, but that's not uncommon. Like, it does, just because you're outside of a city doesn't mean you don't hold any like weight in politics or in like the dynasty, so to speak. So it's almost like I feel like you're from a well-to-do family here that has land or is like ruling over a part of a region that's known. So it's like it almost feels like your parents or your father or whatever is still very much linked to the main hub of what's going on. Maybe like I guess they would consider it the emperor, but you yourself, this region is just placed outside. It's placed away from the main hubbub of what would be like considered like the central place where like the emperor is, so to speak. Okay, so what else coming through? One second. Okay. So we're looking at the life of very much like a lady. So how you can be making connections already, for example, could be one as simple as, have you ever had any pull or intrigue or, you know, curiosity about Japanese culture, the food, the language, the history, the dress attire, even just like the people, the whole like aesthetic, the culture, whatever it is. If you've had any intrigue in that, even if it's the kind of thing where you're like, I want to decorate my house with a photo of Mount Fuji, like if that Mount Fuji thing ever like pulled at you, or certain art pieces, that is one of those types of connections that are easy to make because it's like in your face, you know about it, you're like, oh yeah, I've always liked this or that. But other connections you could be making, for example, would be one, have you always been, have you found that your personality plays the role of being dutiful to those that you, that are like your family members or those that you're nearby? Like, are you a people pleaser, basically, is what it feels like. If you find that you're a people pleaser, if you are playing a certain role, like being dutiful daughter or dutiful wife, or, you know, or you take pride in doing those kinds of things, or it could be the kind of thing where it even kind of bothers you because you notice it so much but you can't help yourself, such as being a people pleaser. That could be a connection as well. On the other hand, how you can be making connections could be completely opposite. Like, for example, if you're let's say this person ends up being like the dutiful daughter here, you could be coming back in this life to experience something completely different. Like, did you go through a big rebellion phase? Like that kind of thing. Do you consider yourself a rebel? You see, so when our soul experiences one thing, a lot of times it comes back to experience something else. Also, you can be making connections also with the history thing, because I know a lot of people are pulled or triggered when it comes to a certain time in history, like a certain era or a few eras, like affect them in a big way for some reason. Like, let's say even just like learning in school a certain historical period, you know, that you've come across and you're like, wow, I feel like somehow emotionally attached to this for some reason. Pay attention to that as well. And of course what's really good is we have Google now, so go ahead and Google and see when that would be, like when the Japanese dynasty, like the emperor was at its, almost like at its peak, and it was like, I mean, back when we're looking at like, I think in the Western society we think of it like where there's like, you know, martial arts kind of thing, when that was like at its peak kind of thing. I want to say at this point it feels like if they are linked in with the modern world or the Western world, it would only be at the very, very, very beginning of making or establishing relationships. But I don't even think that we're looking at that yet. I don't even think they're established with any Western countries or any other countries as far as trade goes yet at this lifetime that we're looking at, okay? Also, what you can be connecting with is this woman we're looking at had a lot of very ladylike qualities. So either one, you could be someone that really holds that in high regard for yourself, like you have high standards for yourself as far as things as simple as a beauty regime, you know, like grooming or tidiness, or making sure you get a manicure, or making sure your hair is cut. You know, like, I know it sounds kind of random and weird, but these kinds of things do cross over a lot. Like, because I'm looking at a woman here who was very refined and very, like, very put together. And those kinds of things, when you go through a lifetime with them, you can either come back with them, it's likely you come back with some of those traits where you like to be put together. Or it could be, again, the opposite thing where you're like, oh, screw that, I want to live my life as a wild child and I don't care about grooming, and you know what I mean? So you could have, you can come back a couple of different ways based on what we're looking at here. So let's just keep moving on, because there's a lot coming from that, so let's just go to the next one. And this is what you do with the majority of your time, and it says art. So what's really interesting about this one is, because of this dutiful feeling that comes from this person we're looking at here, while art can mean like so many things for so many people, right? I mean, it's so many things. But what I feel is coming from here is it's linking it with art because it's talking about the things that you as a lady in the type of family that you're in would have to know, as far as being like, proper. So I feel like very much so when we get art, we're talking about you having to learn the ways of like the ladies of that time, what they would have to do, whether it's embroidery or whether it's, you know, certain like textile things that women had to do back then, learning how to do certain, especially things in it feels like Japan more than anything, but like Japanese textile things that they had to do back then. So what's coming to me more than anything is embroidery, but I feel like there is something else that is just as important, and it's almost like, if anything, it feels almost like musical, something about like a traditional musical piece that in what they're showing me, it looks like a harp, but I'm not sure if they had harps back then, so what they're showing me is what I'm most like familiar with. But I feel like there's a kind of string instrument that a lady would know how to play if she were of a certain class, and like kind of like how some women in the Victorian times, you know, a higher class would, you know how to play piano or something like that. But here it feels like this like lovely like string instrument. So we're looking at like this person, it's almost very well-rounded as far as art goes, but it's also, there's a fine skill about it. Because see, this card could have come up to indicate that you were learning all these things a different way. It didn't have to be the art card. It could have been, another, like, you know, there's other cards have different meanings, of course, but like it could have been coming up in a different card, but it chose the art card, which means that there's a feeling of a skill involved. So how you can be connecting with this in any way is, one, are you someone that likes to do things with your hands? Are you a crafty person? Are you able to do certain arts and crafts? Are you someone that actually enjoys music? Are you someone that, or here's what's interesting. A lot of times it's someone that might not play a musical instrument but wishes they could, or wishes they did pick something up as a child, you know, that kind of thing, a certain inclination. It can also be a certain inclination of a musical sound. So do you hear things that are string instruments sometimes, or specific string instruments, because a guitar sounds completely different from a cello, right? So is there a certain string instrument that you've heard that triggers you? And when I say trigger, it's kind of like an emotional tug. It's not just like, oh, I really like that. It's more like, oh, there's something about that really pulls at me. There's something about it. So that kind of thing as well. But art can mean different things as well. So don't let that limit you, because I feel like this person here is capable and skilled at so much of the things that she was supposed to learn or meant to learn, or, you know what I mean, based on her status. She knew many things. So what they're giving me, of course, is embroidery, and they're giving me music, and I know that there are other things. It's almost like I'm looking at a table with chairs, a round table with chairs, and they're just giving me a couple of seats to tell you, but there is like other seats. So look at your life and see if there is anything that speaks to you that is considered art, but also would be considered something that a finer class person back in the old times would know automatically in order to like be considered a like a high class like female like character, like a good wife or a good daughter, or whatever it is. I hate to say it that way, but that's how it feels. And the embroidery thing too. Are you a skilled seamstress? Are you skilled at knitting or crocheting or embroidery itself, or a sewing machine? Does it feel natural when you picked it up? Any of these arts and crafts things that you might be doing, is there anything in your life that felt natural when you picked it up and you're like, wow, I really am taking to this quite easily? So keep that in mind. On another note, this kind of thing comes up too when a person is looking to do something with their life. Like, you might be at a time in your life where you're like, I'm bored, I want the next step. I want to know what to do next. Like, where should I veer towards? And this could be the kind of thing where it's coming up to tell you, hey, this is something you enjoyed before that you have skill at. You'll be able to pick it up again. Why don't you go take a class? Like, look into classes for, if you don't already do it, of course, look into taking an instrument class, look into taking a seamstress, tailoring, sewing, knitting class, whatever, you know, like look into arts and craftsy things that you might like to do. I mean, it might even just be painting rocks, you know what I mean? Just something that's artsy and craftsy might feel very fulfilling to you at this time if you happen to be looking for something to do, if that makes sense. All right, so let's go to the next important day, or the first important day, I should say. So here's the death card. It says there is death in this place, because this is usually meaning somebody is dying or is killed in like where you're witnessing it, like so in front of you or something like that. So the relationship involved is family, and the feeling involved is happy, and you're like, why is it happy when somebody is dying? So I'm just trying to see what they're showing me here, because who is dying is a male figure, so I'm just trying to see what's going on here. It's a male figure, and I definitely know that the happy feeling, it's not like yay, but it's more like a relief, if anything, because it feels like there's something about this person dying that takes a huge burden off of you. And I'm trying to see if it's a husband figure or a father figure, because quite frankly, it feels like both. So what's coming through as I'm talking is it feels very much like either one, you were being married off either to someone who is much older than you for their status, you know, like almost like I feel like this would be like yeah, almost like a kin, like a not a kin, but like where you peace, like there's something about like you marrying this guy brings peace to everybody, because it's almost like a rival marriage in a weird way. So it feels like you're either being arranged marriage off to this guy, or you're already married to an older male figure. It feels like there's a big gap in your ages, but it also is something that you kind of expected, even though it's not desired. But at this time period, it feels very much like you have no say, and nor do you feel like you should, which is kind of like you're a product of the times, you know, like, you know, hey, I'm a daughter of a wealthy, you know, or even like a royal-ish kind of family in a way, like not king, but maybe like a duke or a, you know, or a countess, you know, like that kind of thing, even though that's not Japanese, it's just that's what it comes to my head. But it's like you don't put up a fight, but it feels like whoever this person is put a lot of restrictions on you just by being who they were. Not necessarily like super harsh, not necessarily like, you know, a bad person or like a mean person, but just someone who was, again, a product of the times. So it feels very much more than, the more I talk, the more things come through. It is feeling like a, we're looking at the death of a husband who was arranged. It was arranged marriage, and it's almost like, there's something about it where it's like the death of him equals a breath of freedom for you. And it also feels like the death of him, also what it does, it's a weird feeling, because I don't know how it was back then, but it feels like almost like, okay, he's gone, now I have free reign over my home, because now you're the lady of the house. I mean, you were the lady of the house, but now you are the mistress of the house. Like, this is your property, your land, like, there's something there about, like, it's almost like, and this is an interesting day too, because it feels like with the death, you retain a certain power, but it's not just like the property, it's also like internal. It's like you come to a certain power within your own right that you've never had before, and there's something very empowering about that. And then also, there's a link about it with your father in this life. There's something weird about going on, like, it's almost like your father comes in to step in to his role in a weird way, like, oh, you won't be able to handle this yourself, but it's like you put your foot down and you're like, no, this is my home, this is my life, I'm an adult, even though you're very, very young. I'm an adult, this is how it is. No. So it's almost like this is a day you kind of like learn to say no and grab at and retain your freedom. So in your current life, you can find that you chose a family where you would be able to continue on with this lesson of saying no to your parents, and so there might be you might have had or do have a strange relationship with your father, a certain like control relationship, or you could have chosen to come back and chosen a family where you would not have to deal with this anymore, having learned about it already. Because once we learn a lesson, a lot of times we like to come back and do things past the lesson differently, not having to learn it over again. So it could be that instead you did choose a family where you have very doting parents, or you have a good relationship with your father who gives you the freedom that you desire, that kind of thing. So if that's ever played any kind of role in your life, keep that in mind as well. Also, what's interesting is this whole saying no thing, and then this thing up here we were talking about you being a people pleaser. So there's something about the power of saying no and the power that gives you as a person. And it doesn't mean you're a bad person, it just means that you value yourself more. So this could be coming through just as a message that if you are that kind of, person, to continue doing so and not to back down from that stance. Or if you still are a people pleaser, to learn to say no. And it's very important that you learn to say no, because you've already learned the lesson. It's important that you keep up with the lessons you've already learned so you can continue and move forward from those lessons. So I just feel like, if anything, this is a big message that is just saying, no matter who it is, if they are, it could be family, it could be your own parents, your kids, whatever it is, if they are encroaching on your freedom or on your happiness, your bubble, if they're encroaching on territory around or within you that feels like it's a burden, and that feels like it's trespassing in a way, like an emotional trespass, say no. You have every right to say no, and you have the power to say no, because it's the kind of thing where you have to demand respect for yourself if others won't give it to you. And a lot of times people don't give it to you because they're busy trying to get their own respect and control. So this is just kind of a reminder that you are worthy and valuable of basically your own, what's the word? Your own power, your own, there's a word there that I want to get out, and it starts with a P, and I can't remember it. I'll write it to you if I remember. But basically, you are worthy and valuable of saying no to people, no matter who they are, if it means your happiness and your peace of mind, okay? It's a big deal. So don't downplay that kind of self-respect. The next important day here is the wow card. It's the wowzer card. I love this card because it's a big day. It usually means like you're learning something big, kind of like what you just did the day before, the whole saying no thing, but it's just another kind of big, like, aha moment kind of thing. And the feeling, or the people involved, a relationship, is a soul group, and that can mean so many things. That can mean friends or family, just people who travel with you throughout many lives that help you learn lessons in different ways. Also, your soul group doesn't mean they're your best friends either. I mean, they can be your enemies, and they're still teaching you amazing lessons that are just like worthy of the biggest thank you at the end of the life, when you look back and you're like, oh my god, even though you were my enemy, you taught me so much, you know? The feeling here is grateful, which is basically what I was just saying, is being grateful even for those who come as our teachers that we may not like very much in the moment. So I'm just trying to see what we have here and what we're going through here. Okay, so what's happening is this day is linked to this day, and it's not the same day. It's just that what happened here, what it did was it propelled you forward so much in your soul growth. It propelled you. We just saw so much maturing because you were at a crossroads here. You could have relinquished and said, okay, whatever you want, to those who wanted to take your land and power, whatever it was. Or you could have taken the step, which you did end up taking, which was no, putting your foot down. This is my life. I'm going to be in control of it, and I've earned it. And from here, we see you only progressing and moving forward. So what we're actually seeing is someone who takes on more masculine tendencies from this day forward, but not really outwardly masculine in how you think about it. I'm not saying like, okay, she like strapped on boots and like spit into a tin, like, I don't know what I'm saying, but you know what I mean. Like, she didn't turn to a man. She basically, what she did was she took on masculine attributes, like being more forward, being more overt, outspoken, more demanding in a good way, where demanding of her needs and wants, less what's the word, like gosh, I'm out of words today, but like demure, like less like, you know, just like taking whatever comes her way kind of thing, more like laying out her own path is what it is. So it feels very much like we see, this is actually feeling like years later. So years later, what's nice is we're seeing her, okay, I want to say here, we're looking at someone who's like maybe like 20, you know what I mean? So then here we're looking at someone who I feel like is maybe like 35, 40, which back in this time I feel like that's when a woman, you know, was considered like, oh, you're an old maid because you're not married at 40 or whatever, except, you know, she's a widow instead, which is what is actually helping grant her this status, which is actually another thing that's coming up. It's the whole everything happens for a reason. So, you know, a husband here dies, and today in this timeline, if someone dies that you know, you're with someone, you love them, and they die, it's awful and horrible, and you miss them, and you're like, wow, whoa, you know, woe is me, and why me? Why is this happening to me? But then, you know, you turn around and there's always a silver lining. Oh, well, they left all of their property and money to you to make sure that you live happily and securely. And, you know, it's like, it's that kind of thing. And I'm not talking about material gain, but I am talking about seeing the silver lining in every situation that you might consider to be bad. Because every time there is a situation that seems harsh or unfair, it's only an opportunity to grow. It's only being presented to you in this life as an opportunity to learn from and to react to in a certain way. So if you're being presented with something that is otherwise like would throw you into hard grief and unconsolable sadness and remorse or anger or fear or rage, if any of those things are coming up, if there's a situation like that, it's okay, of course, to feel what you feel. But it's also an opportunity to react differently. Whereas before you might have reacted with rage, now you're able to see it a little bit more like big picture-ish and maturely, in a way where you step back and you're like, okay, this is happening for a reason. I am angry, but what am I learning from this, and why is this lesson presenting itself to me? What can I do? So you react a little bit differently, a little bit more wisely. So keep that in mind for situations that may come up that seem unfair. Really, they're all blessings in disguise. You just have to find the blessing, hence it's in disguise, right? So this is what I feel like this day is about, is actually hindsight. This is a day of hindsight where you're able to look back over the years and you've seen all of the things that have happened because you decided to make the choice to kind of claim your power, in a sense. So this is just one of those, like, it's just like a beautiful moment of a day where you look back, and the soul group card has to do with you looking back and looking at all of the players in your production of life. So if life is a play, everyone has a role, and here you're able at this age, more mature, more wise, you know, maybe probably around 40 or so, whatever it is, having lived a very full life by this age in this time period, able to look back and see what role everybody in your play played for you, and how you learned from them, and how you've grown from them, even if they've been the bad guys, right? Because there's always bad guys, there's always a villain, there's always the protagonist, there's always the antagonist, you know, everyone has a role. And when you're able to look back and see everybody on a soul level, the role that they played in order to help you in your life along the way grow on a spiritual level, then that's where all the love and gratitude does come in. This grateful card, you do start feeling love and gratitude even for the most villainous of villains. You start to love them because you see everything that you have learned from having to deal with them. And you also kind of start to see their humanity as well. So I feel like that is an important thing as well as to come up. Is it's a kind of a weird balance here, because if you're that people pleaser, learning to take your power back, it can either, one, make you someone that claims your power in such a way that you are hardened, or you can take your power in a way where you start feeling more balanced and you know when to give and take without fear that you'll lose it all again. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like that's why this is coming up, is just a little gentle reminder for you that you can look back on your life and you can see all the roles and all of this play, and you can start to love even those that you feel like you never forgive again. You can start to love them and know that that love is not a weakness. And the forgiveness you can give them doesn't mean that you're forgetting. It's just the forgiveness and the love that you give out is going to help you more than anything move forward. Okay? If that makes sense. And it's also coming through in this way because it's showing you that you are quite capable of that balance, more than capable of that balance. So, let's go to the Death. Now, when I laid this card down, this is the Murder card. When I laid this card down, what came through was kind of unusual. I've never had it before. It was flowers. So what came through were flowers. So what I'm trying to see is, were those flowers given to you? Were they, you know what I mean? Like, it's like almost like, are they poison? Are they herbs? Are they, like, what is this? And I'm just, because as I talk a lot of times, the things fill in as I'm speaking. So now as I'm speaking, what's coming through is something about ingestion. It does feel like a poisonous reaction. There's a reaction going on. Something about tea, drinking the tea. I'm trying to see who's doing this or what's, because sometimes we do it to ourselves. I'll get the Murder card when people commit suicide as well. So I'm just trying to see what's going on. Okay. So what it actually feels like is happening is there is this herb that's put into a tea that, if taken too much or too often, or too much as far as quantity or too often, ends up shutting down certain organs or something. There's something where it's a poison if it's taken too much or for too long of a period, and I feel like that's what's done here. And I feel like this is a weird thing because I feel like what it is it's by your request. So I almost feel like you're requesting it because you like it, and at this point I feel like you're taking it because you're sick. So it's almost like, it's a weird thing, okay? I'm just gonna tell you, like, this is just what's coming through is, it's a kind of thing where if you drink it in proper amounts, it can help you. Let's say you have a cold, or you're just like ill or whatever it is, and you're in bed and you're taking tea, kind of like how we have soup or something. So you're having like this tea where this flower is an herb, it's in the tea, and the proper dose is good. Too much of it is hazardous. So I feel like you're requesting it because you like it, the taste or the smell, whatever it does, it feels good. It might even have an effect where it makes you numb, or it makes you it might even have it gives you a high feeling, whatever it is, this flower, plant, whatever, makes you feel good, so you're requesting it, and it's almost like the people who are giving it to you have to do what you say. So it's almost like they're giving it to you, but they're like, this is way too much, this isn't good, but you're like, this feels good, it's making me feel better, I'm sick, I'm just gonna take it. And it's a very odd thing, I've never had that before, so it's almost like the Murder card is coming out because it's almost like you do end up kind of killing yourself, but not intentionally, and also your servant women, or the ladies who serve you, they also are taking part, obviously, in this death, but not intentionally either. It's by your request. So that's an interesting kind of thing. So how you can connect with this in your life would be, one, you might find in your current life that you have an overindulgent personality for yourself. Like, if there's something you find that you like, you might go on like an obsessive phase with it, whether it's like a new, like a new food that you try, or a new drink that you found, or whatever it is. You're like, oh my god, this is amazing, and then you go for a week straight just drinking that, or just eating that, that kind of thing. So it could be that kind of thing, or it could just be, that you might have had in your lifetime issues with moderation, where you just have a hard time having whatever you like in moderation. It doesn't even mean food and drink per se. It could also mean doing things like spending, so it doesn't have to be bad. It could be like, oh, I love hiking, I'm gonna go out to the woods for a very long time and not do work because I want to be over here, that kind of thing. Any issues when it comes to moderating yourself. And if not, it would be great, first of all, but if you don't have it, it's because you learned it here. You realized what was happening, and your soul already was like, okay, I'm not doing that again. But otherwise, it would come from here if you find that you do have issues with moderation. Another thing would be you might actually have allergies. So if you are allergic to certain things of natural substance, it could be something as simple as honey. You might be allergic to honey. You might be allergic to a certain plant. Certain plants actually would make more sense, quite frankly, even though I think honey is kind of plant-like in itself. But if you have allergies of any kind, it could stem from here as well. And also, if you have chronic fatigueness, it could stem from here. And then anything with your digestion, basically. If you have any digestive issues or like sensitivities when you eat certain things or whatever it is, keep that in mind too, because it could stem from what happened there. So now we come to the lesson learned, and this lesson is the compromise card. So we're looking at the compromise card for this life, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, we see you compromise. First of all, what's nice is we just kind of see like the flow of it. So we see you compromise basically your freedom for when you have to marry into this arranged marriage, right? So then what's interesting is when this happens, when the death of this husband happens, there's a compromise that you make almost again, and it's a weird kind of compromise because what you're doing is it's a good compromise. So this compromise here is the kind of compromise where it's like, I will compromise my freedom for my duty. Here, you're compromising what others think of you for your happiness, okay? When you're saying you put your foot down on that day and you say no, you are compromising, potentially stigmatizing yourself and putting others off of you, like keeping your family away, never, that kind of thing, in order to be happy, in order to be empowered. That's awesome. So what we're seeing this compromise card come up again for, though, what it also is coming up for is your current life as well. So how does compromise speak to your current life? Are you again compromising yourself for others' happiness? Do you have to relearn that lesson? Do you have to learn to say no again? Do you have to perhaps compromise some relationships in your life now in order for you to feel fulfilled and happy? For example, there might be toxic people in your life who just want to take, because deep down you might be a people pleaser and you might have a hard time saying no, so you just give them what they want, and this might not speak to you at all, but if it does, this would just be a little reminder that it's okay to compromise some relationships in your life in order for you to feel happy and respected and fulfilled and like you're on your own path again and not on a path that others are laying out for you simply by their requests of you, if that makes sense. So anyway, there is your past life. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're able to make some connections, and thanks for letting me read you.